Hello, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. I'm also the author of Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. And the reason I'm bringing up this book in particular, as well as The Empowered Divine Feminine, is because this is a series on codependency. And yes, of course, in addictions and alcoholism and dysfunctional families in general, codependency tends to show up and shine its bright lights. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I do tarot and astrology readings. You can book that at my website, michellefondinauthor.com. Welcome to this series on codependency, what it is, how to get over it, and all of those themes. The topic for today is, what is the root cause of codependency? It's really important that you understand, how did this happen to me? What is the root cause of my codependency? This is huge because if you don't understand where it came from in you, it'll be really hard to detect. And then if you can't detect it, but you know there's something problematic in your core relationships, then of course you can't change it. If you can't detect it, you don't understand the root cause, what's really causing this behavior in you, then of course it's really, really hard to change because change is hard, right? If you haven't yet checked out my first video in this series on the 3 types of dependencies, go ahead, I'll post that link here and just bookmark it for after this video. So the root causes of codependency. Let's go back to when I personally discovered the concept of codependency. You see, I didn't even know it was a concept till about the year 2015. Isn't that nuts? So I was well into my 40s when I discovered codependency. And really, it was between probably 2015 and the early part of 2016 when I began to research, study, understand the concept of codependency. I had gone to al-anon, AA with my alcoholic loved one. That's why I brought up the title of the book. And I learned codependent behavior doesn't uniquely come in the realm of addiction, but certainly it's a part of it. It comes in the realm of dysfunctional family relationships, but in reality, here's the reality of it, guys. Most relationships today have a level of codependency. And the reason for that is because we are not taught in school, we're not taught in families, we're not taught in Relationships 101 how to act with others through the concept of proper boundary setting, knowing ourselves, and unconditional love. And all of those can go hand in hand to help create healthy, interdependent relationships. And it's not something that we generally talk about. The root cause of codependency for me did not come in the midst of an alcoholic relationship per se, but it came notably from my primary caretaking relationship, which is the relationship with my mother. Now, the reason why this developed as such is that my mother has a really unhealthy relationship with herself. And because she has an unhealthy relationship with herself, she often lives in that victim mindset that I need to do everything for you, but poor me because no one's doing anything for me. And if you were raised in that way where you had to obey your parents, not question them, have no boundaries that were respected, then rest assured, those are the roots of a codependent relationship. Because what the codependent relationship says early on, when you don't have a choice as a child, right? It says you must cater to the adult that is taking care of you. Your feelings don't matter. What you want doesn't matter. How you process the world does not matter. And I'll give you a prime example of this. If you were a child and it was springtime, for example, in your region of the world, and you didn't feel the need to wear a jacket because your body was telling you, hey, I don't need to wear a jacket. But your caretaker insisted that you must be cold and that you must wear a jacket, and forced you then to wear a jacket, as an example, then you were being taught to ignore your feelings, wants, desires, your body's boundaries for another person and for that other person's desires. And so even that programming from early on tells us to ignore what is going on inside of us for the sake of the other. Secondarily, the concept of people-pleasing tends to come as manipulation, and it is a tool that we learn. So there are two sides to people-pleasing, and it's something that I do address in many of my books, notably The Empowered Divine Feminine and Twin Flame Union, the 7 Keys to a Healthy Twin Flame Journey, that people-pleasing comes in two forms. It comes in a form where you want to be perceived as an excellent person. You want to be perceived as a flawless person. And so you will bend over backwards and do whatever you can do to help another person, be with another person, do what they want to do, because you do not ever want to be perceived as unhelpful, bad, cantankerous, angry. But it is very, very, very manipulative to be a people pleaser, because you are manipulating their point of view by doing actions to actually manipulate their point of view. And the second part of people pleasing is a little more innocent, but it really comes from our cultural and mostly religious upbringing that says you must be a good person. Many of the monotheistic religions in the world, and again, I'm not bad-mouthing or bad-talking any religion, because I was raised Christian. I consider myself to be a Christian. Actually, I was raised Catholic, became a Protestant, I guess, non-denominational Christian, and I still consider myself to be a Christian. And I have nothing bad to say about religions in and of themselves, right? It's often the people within those organizations that distort the true meaning of what the religion was founded upon. On the basis for being a good person, a good Christian, for example, would be that you have to give of yourself in all ways to the other person. You must not think of yourself, you must think of the other person. And so then people pleasing becomes like horrible, because you are depleted in and of yourself. You are ignoring your needs, you're ignoring your boundaries for the sake of someone else. And that quickly becomes a breeding ground for codependency. Now, the root of the codependent relationship requires a couple of things. It requires two people who have low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-respect, and poor boundaries. That was more than one thing, wasn't it? That was like 4 things. I'll say that again. The requirements of a codependent relationship are going to require on both ends, on some level, poor self-esteem, poor self-worth, poor self-respect, and poor boundaries. So that's 4 things. And even though on the surface, we're talking on the shiny exterior surface, it may not at all appear to be so, that is definitely the case. And here is why, because typically a codependent relationship is a power struggle between 2 people. Now, on the surface, on the shiny, shiny, shiny exterior surface, it may look like one person is taking advantage of the other person. For example, if you are in a relationship with someone who is an alcoholic, for example, you might be the codependent enabler, and the alcoholic is the codependent alcoholic. And the uneven power dynamic may seem like the alcoholic has all of the power because it may seem that they are calling all of the shots, right? They're telling you what to do. They're out of control. You need to take care of them, clean up after their messes, give them money. And so it really does appear on the outside that the codependent enabler is the victim and then the alcoholic is the narcissist, right? To put it in modern terms. But if you dig deeper, if you go beneath the surface of what everybody else sees, it's so much more than that. It is so much more. And if you dig deeper into the roots of the codependent dynamic, what is revealed are the traits of the 4 things that I mentioned. Because in order for you to get into a codependent relationship and be vulnerable enough to do that, you already have to have those 4 things: poor self-esteem, poor self-worth, a lack of boundaries or very poor boundaries, right? A lack sense of self and integrity. And the other person does as well, even though they may not appear to have that. Often the person who is the dominant one in the codependent dynamic tends to show off as being very independent and extremely confident. They might be shouting louder, they may be calling all the shots. But on the flip side, the codependent enabler in that type of dynamic tends to be extremely manipulative and controlling. And here is why. If you are a person who is a codependent enabler in a codependent relationship, you have this air of superiority over the other person because you're the healthy one, so to speak, right? You're the one that has the answers. You're the one that has it all together. You're the one that is telling the other person what to do, how to live their life, and how to survive or thrive. So you're the savior, right? You're the one who's helpful. But in reality, it's coming from a point of weakness and not strength. The root is feeling weak. Okay, and so I know this is hard to grasp. This is so hard to grasp because if you are in a codependent relationship, you might be thinking like, I am not weak. I am not the one who is the narcissist, or I am not the one who is the drunk, or I am not the one who is the addict, or I am not the one with a mental illness, right? You might be thinking that. But if it's an electional relationship, meaning if you are an adult and it's not a parent or a sibling, in which case, if you're an adult, you can choose not to be in a relationship with a mother, father, sister, brother, or even cousin, or even best friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife. You can choose not to be in that relationship. But the point of weakness in the codependent enabler comes from the weakness that I must control another person not to show my own weaknesses. So you will pick someone who is actually inferior to you in the way of personal development, emotional development, and psychological development. You'll pick a person who is inferior to you so that you can feel superior, so that you can then have the upper hand, right? A person who is healthy and has a healthy sense of self, self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, self-respect, and beautiful boundaries would not even entertain a relationship with a person who is that unhealthy. They just wouldn't. They wouldn't give it their time of day because they would have enough self-respect and self-integrity to say, I am not dealing with this. This is not my problem. It is their problem. And so it's my turn and it's my time to walk away from this. And this took me forever to realize. Since my roots were in taking care of a very codependent mother who wasn't a drunk, but I think she was addicted to prescription pills. It was way back in the day, and they used to give women speed for diet pills, and she was taking those things every day. So she was on some kind of drug high, and I did not know this, of course, but I had to emotionally take care of her. She would often break down in tears. She would often give me emotional blackmail. More often than not, it was emotional blackmail. And so because those roots were taking care of a dysfunctional adult when I was a child, of course, those behavioral traits were going to naturally transfer over into my adult relationships. It was bound to happen because I didn't understand that there was another way to deal with an intimate relationship. Now, parent-child is an intimate relationship, right? You get to know each other quite well. And so any other intimate relationship, whether it's a best friend or a lover or a spouse, those dynamics are going to show up again and again and again until you realize the root cause of them and how you learn to cope with the situation at hand as you were in a codependent dynamic, a functional or non-functional codependent dynamic. Codependency can show up in very subtle ways at the root cause. Your parentals, for example. It can show up when a parent, for example, lives vicariously through their child. And if you were told what you must study as a student, if you were told what you must become as an occupation as a child, then that parent was projecting their will onto you, unduly controlling you, and creating a codependent link that was living through you vicariously, which is codependency. When someone tries to live through another person vicariously through osmosis, wanting for them exactly what they wanted for themselves, but that they could not do, then that is a codependent link. And it even goes so far as to telling a child that you are raising how to dress, telling them what to eat, telling them that they must play this sport or they must take this activity. Now, of course, parenting is a gentle but complicated art. And I am in agreement with you that parents must guide their children. I'm in agreement that parents today don't nearly educate their children enough in the way of guidance, because guidance is extremely important. You must guide your children because they're children. They don't know any other way. But in guidance, you can give them two choices, for example. If it's, would you like to take some lessons in acting to go into theater, or would you like to play soccer? You let them choose, right? One or the other. So yes, we must guide our children, but where the codependency comes in is the projection of the parent saying, this is not your life, this is my life, I make all the decisions. And then that creates the uneven power dynamic that is like infiltrating into that other person's life. You are making your will control them, really. That's what it is. It's being controlling. And so there are very subtle ways. And in many cultures, that is just the way. I have dealt with a lot of clients who are from India. Now, this is mostly from my past when I owned a yoga studio. And many of my clients were newly pregnant because I taught prenatal yoga. And they came over from India and they were very fresh off the boat, if you will. They had just come over after having gotten married. Most of them were in arranged marriages that they were allowed to agree to or disagree on. But for the most part, what I have heard firsthand from these clients is that the Indian culture from India, right, not Native American, we're talking about Indians from India, that much of the culture is you must respect your parents and you must do what they say, lest you disappoint them. The whole societal structure is based on hierarchy of respecting the parents, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, and the family. And this comes in the way of a lot of guilt and shame if you do not make the decisions that your parents encourage you to make. And there might be some backlash from those families because you did not do what your parents told you to do, even though you're an adult. So that is very, very codependent, even though it's ingrained in a culture. And so do you see how when you go to the roots of codependency, it really is everywhere, right? It's everywhere. Anytime you try to make someone feel guilt or shame in a relationship for not doing what you want them to do, that is codependency. Anytime you try to control or manipulate another person into having them do something that you want or to make a decision toward what you want, that is codependency, right? Or vice versa, right? This could also be happening to you where someone makes you feel guilt, shame for not doing what they want you to do. But those are all the tenets of codependency. And so it's really hard to exit that because first you need to realize it. You need to realize which behaviors are codependent behaviors and which behaviors are interdependent, healthy relationship behaviors, which we certainly will study in other videos in this series. So if you have been having problems in your core relationships, whether it's with mom or dad, sister or brother, lover, best friend, spouse, then you might want to look back into your own life and look at the roots of where codependency started to grow in your own life. But in order to do that, you really need to own your part in it. Again, if you were a child, it's not your fault that you developed these patterns, right? It was the only thing that you knew. But now that you are an adult, you can take a look at these patterns that were developed most likely in early childhood and how they grew over time and how they grew in different relationships, and then take responsibility for your part in it. When I discovered in 2015 that I was in a codependent relationship and that I was the enabler in that codependent relationship, I did not want to take responsibility for my half of things. I was like, he's the alcoholic, it's his problem, he is out of control, he just needs to stop. But then I didn't realize that my behavior of being sneaky, manipulative, controlling, trying to control his behavior, trying to control his outcome was also extremely unhealthy, dysfunctional, and showed my weaknesses. It showed that I didn't love myself enough, that I was paying too much attention to his life and his behavior, that it wasn't my job to pay attention to his behavior. It was my job to pay attention to my own behavior. And that gets very involved if you don't yet know how to untangle the tangled mess of a codependent relationship. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have a comment about the root causes of your codependency, please do put that in the comments section below. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with anyone who could use help with healthier relationships. And thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. I have 11 published books. You can check those out on Amazon. and I will see you in the next video.